welcome everyone. Let's make sure you can hear me. Just a moment. Okay, that looks loud and clear. So welcome on in. God bless everybody. Welcome to Wednesday, September 24. And if you're on the replay, who knows? But go ahead and hit the like anyway. And everyone in here, please hit that like. Also, special announcement for the viewers: we got a link tree pinned at the top of the chat. Okay, that link tree, you'll find all my socials, support pathways, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I want to welcome everyone in. I'm so glad to see you all. Tonight's show is going to be a little brief, but we have Amy G or Daisy coming on in to talk to us for a moment, and we're going to take a look at some things. And that's the way that it is. So God bless you all. Welcome on in. I'm glad to see everybody. Um, Please be aware that I have a Substack over at readtheprof.substack.com. And if you want to go over to that Substack and subscribe, there's plenty of information that I have been posting there and that I will be. So please check that out. And also, please welcome our new addition to the live stream here, the monitor in the back. So I hope that you enjoy the screensaver there. It entertains you if you get bored, for those of you who get bored rather easily. But anyway, please join the chat. If you're on the replay, please join the comment section. I really would appreciate that. I like to hear what you all have to say, and this is on an ongoing conversation and has been. And I'm telling you, these comment sections are just absolutely fabulous. There's a continual flow of wonderful comments in the comment section once the live streams are done. So if you've never gone and checked out the comment sections, I would advise you go into the recent handful of videos and live streams and read the comment sections. There's always so many amazing comments, and you're going to miss things if you only participate in the live chats and never go and check out the comment section. Okay. So with that being said, welcome to the channel and the show for tonight. Tonight's show is called Meet the Community, Daisy Asks. And I hope to be doing more of these with community members so that all of you will introduce yourselves to this community who follows the Delphi murders and the other stuff that I cover. Truly do appreciate that. Another special announcement is I have decided to do something that I'm going to be calling Twitch Thursdays. So I have started a Twitch channel, and I'm going to be sharing it with you later so that all of you can go over there to Twitch and put on your notifications, whatever you need to do, so that you can watch us there on Thursdays. Okay. So glad to see everybody here. Welcome. Now, let's see. So before I get started and too deep into it, I want to say that I got some really, really, really positive news today. Okay, on a number of fronts. Now, I know that some of you have been waiting for some things that have been promised that I said I was working on, but hey, you got to be realistic here. This is the Delphi case, and so people often become afraid or hesitant or delay things. So although I have been working on some couple really big things, those things are indefinitely suspended. And these things are suspended for good reason. So I don't really want to give it all away now as to who the individuals are or what the reasons for the delay, but trust that there are good and valid reasons because things are in progress. You know, things are in progress. In other words, the wheels are turning and things are happening with people in the legal system and behind the scenes in this case, such that some people are choosing strategically to wait for things to get to a certain place. So that's all understandable. So just please bear with me on that. But regardless of that somewhat saddening news, there is really good news afoot. Okay. And I would almost put it this way. I think that a lot of our prayers have been answered, and it's somewhat due to the hard work and the passion of a lot of us in the community. And hey, I got to give a shout out to Noe Amos tonight. Okay, so Noe accomplished somewhat of a miracle um, some months ago. And I'm really not going to be talking much about what that is either, but let's just say that I believe in large part due to Noe's efforts, Richard Allen is in a good place, relatively speaking. And so I want to shout out to Noe for really pushing hard when it mattered, and um, and I want to tell everybody that keep your chins up. Okay, that's all I got to say. Keep your chins up. Keep doing things. Keep expressing yourselves. Let your voices be heard. It's really important, and that's something we're going to be talking about with Amy G tonight. Is how we all can do in our own way. We can do things to keep things moving forward in a positive direction, and that's what I believe she has been doing. And so that's why I wanted to have her on tonight and then take a look at some of her stuff. So, um, any more news? Let's see. I don't know. In politics news, wow, Cash Patel really went nuclear explosion uh, in some hearings last week, and that was pretty interesting there. And I do believe the FBI is taking a serious look at Flora and Delphi. So shout out to FBI. It's about time. It's about time you step in and get things moving. Okay. So I want to encourage all the FBI agents and investigators doing their thing to deal with what has to be dealt with in Indiana and in the nation at large. Good job, all you field agents and everybody, boots on the ground. We really appreciate the hard work that you do. And we look forward to some sort of justice coming for Mr. Greg Ferenczi and his family, but also for the victims of the Flora fire and the Delphi murders. Okay. So we're going to keep praying and looking forward and stay optimistic in regards to forward momentum in the deep investigation into all of this revolving around the state of Indiana, the Indiana State Police, the fire department, the victims of the Flora fires and Delphi murders. Okay, because we have really been at this for quite a while, trying to hold some feet to the fire, and maybe it's starting to pay off. You never know. So we look forward to seeing some results in so many ways around the country and in Indiana. Um, One thing I certainly believe, and this has been sort of a bone of contention or point of contention for a while, is the domestic terrorists operating in the United States and on the internet that seem to be hovering around this case. And I'm glad that the the world is at a place where it's beginning to have enough of this sort of internal terrorism and online terrorism, and so things need to happen. And we can make a lot of noise about it, and you can make a lot of noise about it. But at the end of the day, it's up to law enforcement personnel and those who have jurisdiction to take care of the problems on this terrorism surrounding this case and other related crimes in Indiana and around the Midwest and the country in general. Um, I've been hearing little birdies behind the scenes saying that it's drying up. Okay. So, as far as the meth heads, the crack heads, the coke heads, and all the above, I think that the word on the street is starting to, the murmurings are that it's starting to dry up a little bit. Okay. And that is good news. So, let's keep looking in that direction for some sort of forward momentum. Okay. And we'd be glad to see it because it's my belief that Delphi especially is connected to something along these lines. Um, and we want to see Ricos. Let's not kid ourselves here. We've been talking for ages how we want to see Ricos. Okay. And I think that this needs to happen. So appreciate that. And anyway, so we'll be waiting on Daisy to join us. But until she does, I thought that I'd like to say hello to everyone and then go ahead and take a look at her YouTube channel so that you can go subscribe at her channel if you haven't already and you can get to know who she is. Okay. So let's see. First, we're going to do this. All right. So let's see who we got here. Let me go back to the beginning and see who's in the live chat. Shout out. Okay, Adrian, Dark Arts by Adrian's in the chat. Hello, Adrian. Hello, Sweet Dude Shibby. Hello, Brenda Mace. Good to see you. Oleg Cat. Good to see you. Look, Nicole Watts. Moonbeam 70s Child. Granny D. Hey, what's up, Granny D? All right. Quadaxo Mimi. What's up, Quad? Okay. Who else we got in here? The Prof is here in the chat. We got Miss Pie Crust. Hey, Miss Pie Crust. And it looked like Quad became a member. Hey, thanks for joining the memberships, Quad. Appreciate the support. Okay. We got Pie Crust. What else we got in here? Rebecca Ann, 1965. What's up, Rebecca Ann? Okay, we got Gretchen. Hey, Gretchen. And Bonnie, long time no see. What's up, Bonnie? Gretchen, Rebecca. Who we got? Shout out to Rick Snay while I'm at it. What's up, Rick? Okay, Kay's in the house. What's up, Kay? Good to see you. All right. Everybody else who's lurking, what's up, lurkers? I know you're mad. Keep lurking and throwing the phone and banging the phone and kicking the. No, don't kick anything living. Okay, go kick the walls or something. Stub your toes for me. What's up, Tammy? Good to see Tammy. What's up? So I'm glad to see everybody. All right. Now, what was we gonna do here? We're gonna do one of these. Let's see. All right, there you go. This is Daisy Asks. Daisy's channel, Amy G's channel. Daisy Asks, okay, over at Amy G 3060. Amy G 3060. Okay. This is Daisy Asks channel. And you see she's over at the Richard Allen Justice Project, okay? And reddit.com, Delphi Mystery. Clinical psychologist, breast cancer survivor, true crime enthusiast, and she claims to be a certified cat lady. Anyway, this is her channel here for all of you who do not yet have it. Let's see if I'm going to, maybe someone can drop her link in the chat. I'm going to handicap for doing that at the moment, but this is Amy G. And just going to run through a little of this to show you. She makes posts pretty often, okay? Okay, this is, we're going to look at this tonight. And this is some of her community page. And this is her videos here. These are her videos. You can see she's done a lot of videos. This is Daisy's channel. Hey, thank you, Gretchen. Appreciate that. Yeah, you guys go subscribe. If you're new here, you haven't gone subscribe to her, please go subscribe to Amy. Okay. Let's see. Amy G 3060 or 3060. So please go subscribe to her channel. Appreciate that. But you see, she's got her videos. She's got some lives. Okay. Pretty often. Okay. She does a lot of posting and videos and lives. And so go subscribe to her channel there. Let's see if I can go home. All right. All right, there you go. All right. Whoops, I'm fumbling. Pardon me, y'all. I'm fumbling behind the scenes here trying to get my screen together. But glad to see everybody. There comes Four Pits and Anna Paula Baxter. What's up, Four Pits and Anna Paula? Anna Paula. Let me bring Amy G on. I think she's in here. Let's see if I can manage to get her in here. Let's see. I know it's morning over in Australia. Let's see. Hello, hello.
Hi, Prof.
Hey, Amy, I hear you.
Oh, I don't actually have sound on mine. Just give me a second. I'm not sure why I can't hear you.
Okay. We hear you loud and clear, though, Amy. Can you hear me? We hear you.
I still can't hear you for some reason.
Oh, check.
Oh, now I can. I can.
Okay,
I can
we hear you
now.
loud and clear. So, hey, welcome on in. So good to see you.
Nice to properly talk to you.
Yeah, you're working.
I am. I'm working from home today, and I've got a sick child at home too. He's desperate to get in the background, and I've said to him he's not allowed.
No. Stay away from the trolls.
That's what I said. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you don't go on YouTube at this point.
Well, it's good to see you, and everyone say hi to Amy, please. And
Hey,
like I
everybody.
said, subscribe to her channel. It's over there on YouTube.
Oh, thank you so much. I can see some of my buddies in there.
Yeah, they're coming in. Everyone come in. Hey, and if you don't like the prop but you love Amy, come on in anyway. I'll leave you alone. Well, what's your preference? Amy, Daisy? What do you want to go with?
We could do Amy. So Daisy's my dog, as some people who watch my channel know. Daisy's my dog
Daisy's
that's
the
no
dog.
longer with us. So she's my little special angel.
Your little angel puppy. Okay, so yeah, Amy, we're so glad to have you. Wow, I guess for anyone who's new to you, would you like to introduce yourself about some of your background and what do you about your advocating for Rick Allen and the Delphi case?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been obsessed with true crime my whole life. It dates back to, like, I'd say even age 9, being interested in crime to the point where my parents would be a little bit worried about me because I was so curious about, serial killers and crime and things like that. But the Delphi case, I kind of got into around the trial time. I think I'd heard bits and pieces earlier than that, but during the trial, I followed a lot of the coverage. And when they started talking about some of the psychological aspects, I was like, oh, I know about this stuff. I'll have a bit of a chat about this because not only am I a clin psych, but I have worked in the prison system only for a short period many years ago, but I do know a lot about the tools that are used and a bit about that assessment process. And so I started making some videos and I got a few positive comments and likes. And then I kind of paused on that for a while after Rick was found guilty. I was always on the fence initially. I didn't really know for sure whether he was guilty or innocent, but I figured there were lots of people talking about it and I wanted to find out more. And I think it was once the interrogation videos came out and I watched them that I was pretty convinced, looking at him in that interrogation and how he acted, that he reminded me so much more of my clients, who are genuinely, big-hearted, sensitive, anxious people, and he didn't remind me of somebody who I thought could have been living in plain sight for 5 years, having committed such a horrible crime. And so then I looked into the evidence and kept digging because I like to feel more like I wanted to feel confident, I suppose, in my
Hmm.
resolve around it. And as I did that, I kept just uncovering things that I was like, well, this is interesting and this is different. And I think I have a massive attention to detail. Like I very much like to kind of drill into things, and I think very much from a sort of psychological perspective, which I think means a kind of layered, kind of nuanced way of thinking about things. And I think that I felt like I could add to the discussion a little bit.
Hmm.
And yeah, here I am now. And yeah, definitely feeling like I'm getting a lot of support, which is great. And Prof, you're definitely part of the reason for that because you did stick up for me when things weren't
Thank
great.
you. Yeah, I look at people's spirit, and I always, if I see a winning spirit and some joy, I say, well, that's somebody I can get behind. Um,
Yeah.
well, I have a question. So, as a prison psychologist, is that something that many in the field get into when they start their careers, or at some point? Is it a very common thing or more rare thing?
Yeah, not really. So we have a few master's programs for clinical psychology in Australia, like quite a few of those, but probably only there's only one that I know of in my state for forensic. So clinical and forensic psychology, they cross over about 70% in terms of the content that we study. But clinical psychology is kind of the one that most people study. We get higher government benefits for our clients and things like that. So it's the one that's kind of put on the pedestal for that reason, even though we all do quite similar work. Most people in clinical psychology work in hospitals and private practice. I do work in private practice now. But when I was finishing up my master's degree, they were actually opening a brand new facility, a maximum security facility just near where I was studying. And one of my professors at the time was involved with that. And it was going to be a rehab jail. So the whole purpose of it was to rehabilitate with psychologists, social workers, teachers, lots of like employment opportunities and things. And so I was like, you know what? I've always been interested in crime. When am I going to get a chance to go into a maximum security prison? So, so I went along and I worked there for about just over a year. I didn't stay longer because it was away from where like my family is, and I didn't want to be so far away for such a long time. But I loved it. It was a great job. But no, it's not a common job for psychologists here.
Yeah, that's I think rehab facilities are what we need more of, like by the dozens, everywhere. And I really think Rick Allen should have been in some sort of quasi medical facility as a pretrial detainee, especially. It's inconceivable that he would be put in a max security prison. I mean,
100%. 100%. I mean, yeah.
absolutely.
And the thing is, like in the prisons the prison that I worked at here, we had like a separate section for remand inmates. We had separate section for protection inmates. We had separate sections for maximum security, and then there was a minimum security area too. And we had 9 psychologists working within the facility. So my job, because a few of the others were forensically trained, my job was actually to treat anxiety and depression. I have some funny stories of sitting with inmates watching As Good as It Gets and talking about OCD. And so, yeah, I mean, in that facility, someone like Rick could have actually got the support he needed.
Hmm. And see, that makes you particularly relevant, sort of, to Rick's case because he's sort of an anxious, depressive, and was also an inmate. And so my suspicion is that I know so in my history as a teacher, I have a pretty good lie detector built in, because of years and years and years of interacting with kids, and kids try whatever they can, with you. So you start to get this, sixth sense with truth and non-truths. And so I would think you would have somewhat of a similar gut instinct when it comes to guilt versus innocence, because you're probably have come across a bunch who've had this guilt, that they were guilty of the crimes they were convicted of. And so as you interact with them, you're dealing with this guilt psychology. And then when you come upon the rare instance where it's someone who's not guilty, there should be a stark contrast or difference between the two. So I
Yeah,
think
for
that
sure.
that probably informed your, kind of perception of Rick Allen and this whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing that kind of led me to look more into Rick was because of how he presented, and also, I mean, look, there's all of these other sort of characteristics of him that are just inconsistent with this crime. You know, over and above even how he presents. You know, there are no known criminals that I could find in all the searches I've done that committed their first crime around the age of sort of middle age, mid 40s, and a crime of this type. Yes, people can commit their first crime in the mid 40s if it's a domestic crime, you know, a crime of passion in terms of, you know, you catch your partner cheating or something like that. But killing in the broad daylight two young girls in a sadistic manner and staging that, and then going on and living your life for 5 years as though nothing happened. Like if he really were guilty, that would be insanely rare. I haven't found another case like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about any other qualities of his personality that you picked up? I know you've done this kind of a close look from open source information and maybe a little behind the scenes. Um,
Yeah. Actually, just this last week, Diana and I did a live on the weekend. So I had two of my colleagues who don't know anything about the case other than that I've been advocating for Rick. And we had the three of us sit on a panel and discuss his background, you know, so some of the information from Dr. Westcott, and they watched a bit of the interviews. And we've got another part coming up where they listen to the confessions. And it was really good because they were in agreement with me. So highly sensitive person. You know, when we've got somebody who is anxious from such a young age, you know, when I do work with children as well as adults. So when we have a child, you know, around 5-6 years old coming in for anxiety treatment, that generally speaks to what we'd call like a sensitive nervous system. And we now kind of call that neurodivergence. In the past, neurodivergence was seen as only ASD, like autism spectrum disorders, but neurodivergence is basically your nervous system, your brain is wired differently. And I think for Rick, given the early history of anxiety and mental health issues and the persistent chronic nature of them over decades, my assessment of him from the information that I have, which obviously is not a full battery of information, would be that he's somebody who potentially has a sensitive nervous system, which is generally linked, not always, but generally linked to high levels of empathy, not sadism and not psychopathy at all.
mm-hmm.
And to me, that was the standout feature, along with I specialize in the treatment of OCD, and I am actually a long-time OCD sufferer myself. And there is actually a subtype of OCD called scrupulosity OCD. And generally what happens when we have scrupulosity is this constant fear of doing the wrong thing, of being bad, of making a mistake. And sometimes it can manifest in what we call false beliefs or false memory OCD. So this is where we look back historically and think, did I do that? Maybe I did that. And so when I heard the confessions, it actually reminded me of a lot of my clients. I have clients where they will have a dream of, you know, it did something inappropriate, and then they'll wake up and go, did I do that? And I'll be like, no, because they've got this history of OCD. And I'm the same. I've definitely confessed to things in my life, obviously not serious crimes, but confess things to my parents as a teenager, and even right up until, you know, into my adulthood, I'll be like, oh, I think I might have done this. I don't remember. I've certainly had the incident where I'll drive and then I'll go, oh, did I run over something? Did I go past the speed camera? And so when I heard him talking, like, I think I did it, maybe I did it, I was like, oh, I definitely think there's obviously psychosis there. But I also wonder if we look at the hyper religiosity that we've seen, and also we look at his history of being somebody who constantly second guessed himself and doubted himself. I just feel like there's another layer to his mental health that hasn't probably ever been addressed in his life. We're really in the field of psychology, we're really getting now much better at seeing and understanding neurodivergence, but we haven't been in that place for many, you know, for long. And so if I think of Rick's age, I don't think he would have had maybe the assessments that would be done now if he showed up in a clinic. So I wonder if there's other layers, not just anxiety and depression, which is what he was kind of being treated for. Because really, I'd be concerned if you've got a man in his 50s still highly, highly distressed and suicidal, to me, and this is prior to incarceration. I just think that I feel like the health system has failed him even prior to the justice system failing him.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Which is just so sad, right? Because I mean, it's like he was already struggling. His life was tough, and now, um, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he's ended up in this terrible situation as well. So it's heartbreaking, and so I really do feel that he is the third victim of this case, and
Mm-hmm.
care very much about what happened to Abby and Libby. It's absolutely heartbreaking. I think the reason that I'm so focused on Rick is because I actually think we might be able to do something to help him, because I don't know with the girls whether true justice is ever going to come out because of the abhorrent investigation.
Right. And we all would wish that the appellate attorneys have what they need to do the best job and to move forward without interference, but with assistance if it's possible. And I know that you also probably believe the same, that you helping them in the way that you can, even if I feel like there's so many things that I've pushed to the attorneys in different ways. I never feel like I have to hear back, but I just push it in the
Yep.
hopes. And that's been part of my disappointment with the defense here, is that I did so much work in the lead up to trial, and only recently have I discovered that hardly none of that was even known about. And I think, well, man, do you realize the hundreds of hours that I tried to lay on a silver platter for you? But
Yeah. I
it's
think
such
that's what's
it goes.
frustrating, isn't it? Because it's
Hmm.
like we don't have access to all the information, and yet so much
Hmm.
stuff that's been uncovered, particularly since the lifting of the gag order. It's like there's all these little details, and you're like, gosh, I just feel like so many things could have been looked into. And I hate to be critical. Obviously, hindsight is 2020, but I think that there's some pretty massive red flags in that evidence
No one
that's
is
sort of in
beyond
plain sight.
criticism. It's like it's positive, constructive criticism. Um, but we also have to hold the accountability with the court, because this brick wall around this entire case was absolutely intentional. And I always like to remind people, remember that she let cameras in that damn courtroom when the intent was to use them to intimidate the defense attorneys. She let the cameras in there to use as a tool of intimidation against the attorneys, to
Yeah.
get them to force them to step back off the case. But other than that, everything's been a gag order. Everything's been brick walls, lack of transparency, also lies, intimidation. They let people out here threaten to, send death threats to people in the community and Rick himself. So it's just been
And I feel like
insanity.
sometimes there's been red herrings that have been thrown as well towards the defense. Like I just feel like maybe, and I don't know, I don't have any proof of this, but it just feels like sometimes things are being dangled in front of them to take their attention away from the things that actually were in plain sight within that evidence as well.
Well, now you're hitting on my conspiracy theory. Yes, this is my
Yeah.
conspiracy theory, that they were derailed, I think, and distracted. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always believed that. I mean, even thinking that sort of post conviction period where then we got the Richie Davis letters and things like that, and then they kind of honed in and focused on that. Where I was like, but there are other areas that we could focus on still, like like the Hoosier Harvest Store footage, which I've maintained that picture of that car is not as clear as the pictures of the other vehicles on the same road, same day, same camera. So why have you pixelated that picture?
And where's the
Who took
footage
that?
itself? That can't we do some? Yes, it's
Right?
just everything. But it's like Rick's confessions you were bringing up or discussing. I thought, yeah, it's easy to confess if you have this psychology that he appears to have, where he's already going to sort of question, wait, and then he's in a super traumatizing environment. He's being threatened with individuals in the system. He's being medicated inappropriately, and there's all this manipulation going on. And then he's got people with their foot on his neck, you know, which was clearly happening. Anyone who says it wasn't happening, you're just not being honest with yourself. It's obvious Rick was being incredibly harassed. Like I know when the Jones and Robinson deal was happening, he was getting shocked in that vest. This Robert Baston continuously wrote letters on how they were threatening to kill Rick and do all this stuff to Rick. They were making all kinds of racket all day and night. They were leaving the lights on. They were banging on the walls. There was this effort in Indiana to put him under constant state of anxiety. And for me, I call that the foot on the neck or the knee on the neck or whatever.
Absolutely. If we just think about what happened during the COVID-19 lockdowns, you know, the rates of anxiety and depression increased so significantly. You put vulnerable people in that sort of situation, which is not even half of what Rick has experienced. You know, we were all locked down I mean, Australia had the longest lockdowns, I think, in the world, but we were shut down with locked down with our friends and our family. And yet, you know, our referrals skyrocketed. We just couldn't keep up as psychologists. So just imagine like a vulnerable person away from his family in that tiny awful cell. It's just abhorrent. Like it's disgusting. And I have to say, I sometimes feel like I brag a little bit about Australia, but like definitely our system is not the same as that. Having worked in the jail, so I feel like I think it's Rosie that sort of says like, you know, jail psychologists are kind of the lowest of the low or something. I think it's referring to Wala, but it's like no, not in Australia. That isn't how it is. It's not like, you know, oh, the worst of the worst go in and become a psychologist in the jail. We actually truly, you know, psychology is a central integral part of rehabilitation, because we know punishment doesn't work, even for true offenders. Punishing them and putting them in tiny little cells and, you know, basically treating them like animals doesn't work. It doesn't rehabilitate anybody. And so
It won't rehabilitate. No, yeah.
yeah. So I mean our system is so different here.
Yeah. Well,
Thankfully.
so I wanted to there. I mean, I could go on. I know you don't have much time today because you're busy, but we could go on for hours on this.
Oh, sure.
You know, I really could, and we'll have you back hopefully if you're up for it. But I
Definitely.
wanted to bring something up to share with the viewers and let you talk about this because this is absolutely mind-boggling, and it's confirming some of what me and my associates have been tracking down the past couple years in regards to this whole Kathy Shank lost tip narrative not being correct and
Mm,
Rick being on the radar prior, sort of as I look at it as some sort of trump card or something in their back pocket. And I think that they knew this election was coming up. Okay, my conspiracy theory again, for everyone out there who wants to say I'm lying. Okay, this is my theory. My theory is that they could never lose control of this investigation, meaning they needed to win the election. Because losing the election, you had individuals that you could have possibly lost to who were promising to bring in a whole new round of
yep.
investigation and the FBI and all of this. So, to maintain control over this entire cover up or case, you had to win this election. And I think Rick was the one of the plays they made to try to win this election and therefore maintain control. And so, anyway, I wanted to, I'm going to try to share this because I want to send our viewers over to your channel as well. Let's see. Copy. I mean, your website, Daisy. It's
Thank
this
you.
one.
Thank you so much.
This is her new website, which is so amazing, y'all. So please, I'm putting the link here in the chat. Let's see. Boom.
Yeah,
That's
I'm working on it. Look, I'm not a web designer, so you know, I'm working on it slowly using Canva because I use Canva a lot with my clients. And but I think it's what's most important is that hopefully it's got the information there that kind of helps people pick through the evidence.
yeah. You guys see this now? It's linked on her YouTube channel. If you want to go find a link on her YouTube, but see, it says Richard Allen Justice Project, project dedicated to truth and justice, examining the evidence and exposing what went wrong. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this ourselves later, but I wanted to give Daisy the opportunity. I'm sorry, Amy, the opportunity to talk about um, the recent developments with these
The lost
releases
tip.
and the lost tip.
Mm.
And I'll try to pull
Yeah.
up that slide for you while you do that. Let's see.
Yeah, well, I mean, and actually, it was after I'd been doing the live with Diana, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to look at this Doolan tip because the exhibit had been released, and I've always been so curious about this. I think we all have, what was said to Doolan, like what happened back then. And as I was looking at it and I was reading through it, you'll even catch me if you watch my live from that day. There's a point at which I go, wait a minute, that's printed in 2019. What? Like, why was that printed in 2019? And basically, you can see that there's one page that has a print date on the bottom that says the 29th, I think it is, of the 10th, 2019. And at the top, you can see who's logged in, and it's Kathy Shank. So I think if it had been anyone else that was logged in, maybe we could say, oh, well, maybe somebody else just printed it and Kathy Shank, no one knew about it. But then we've got, even then, I wouldn't believe that. But the very fact that it was printed by Kathy Shank, just straight away, massive red flag. Basically, then I've gone back through the testimony with a fine tooth comb, trying to understand, did she say anything about printing things off when she was doing her filing? And no, she doesn't. She talks about going through paper stuff that they had in boxes and organizing it into folders. And basically, it seems like the whole aim of her work was to organize that and then to scan it in and consolidate the database. So there would be no reason to be printing something off the database to put in a paper file. And certainly, if they did that, why was that never mentioned? Nobody has ever referred to this. It did not seem to be part of her role at all. And I think the other point that I'm not sure about, but it sort of seems potentially relevant is what else was going on at that time? Well, guess what? That was the time when they were doing the cast analysis. They were looking more at the geofencing and which phones were around the area. And if you look at the other page of this, which was printed in 2017, so which was the original lead sheet, we have writing on that says nothing new, phone info provided to ISP. Now, that could have been in 2017. And maybe that's what cleared Rick in 2017. I've always wondered that. But I also wonder if that was written in 2019 now. Was that why they were printing it? Because that other sheet of paper doesn't have the mead hex and the mead number on it. It only has the general tip. And I know with geofencing, if you have the mead or the mead hex or the IMEI, in this case, he didn't have an IMEI, that is how you could actually look at who is showing up in the geofence. So that would be the identifier in the stage, I think stage 2 or 3 geofencing. So when you put all of that together, I mean, there's various layers of suspicion there, but I don't understand. Why did she print it in 2019?
Right. And I want to go back to that for everybody. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through here to show people your PowerPoint or your slideshow.
Yeah, I finished this one last night. So I've done a few lives on this, so talking about it, and then I put it all into the slideshow now to see if I can kind of consolidate it all in one place. So that kind of talks you through it. But if you want to hear step by step going through the testimony, I've definitely done a video on that as well.
Okay, you see there's a timeline she has here. Law enforcement's narrative versus the document trail. Okay, so let me see if I can scram on back to the. So the first thing I notice here so everyone, let's see. It's here at the bottom of the page. You see there's a date. October 29th, 2019. Yep. October 29th. You see at the top left, it says Orion. And she circled at the top right, Kathy Shank, invest, which would mean investigator, which is another whole 9 yards we could get into. And I think this was an oversight. Obviously, it goes without saying, this is an oversight in the discovery process where they did not realize they failed to notice this October 2019 date down here. I don't know if you can see the mouse there, but this October 29th date, I think they just failed to notice it.
Yeah.
And so this,
I think they probably read the bulk of it, but they didn't kind of go through, because I think the only reason I saw it was because I was literally going, so this was on this day and this was on this day. I wasn't actually trying to catch anyone out. I was actually just looking at how many officers had seen this tip and how ridiculous it was that even Holman's name is on it, that nobody remembered this. It just didn't add up. But then it was when I looked at that date and I went, there is just that, like, if it was 2022, we'd understand, well, that's when she printed it. Or even if it was 2017, maybe it was printed back then. But 2019, that's right in the middle.
Yeah, and this is after your change of direction in April, remember? And
Yep.
So we have Kathy Shank, which is clearly not like you can tell it's a part of the original document, that Kathy Shank /invest. It's part of the original document. So is this print date.
It's just no explanation
2019.
for
Just
it.
imagine 2019. And I mean, so I guess if we're going to play devil's advocate, we could say, okay, devil's advocate would say, no, it wasn't until right prior to his arrest that he was known about, that it was found. But no, let's clarify that. He was known in 2017 due to his own actions and what they say occurred between him and Dan Dulin, which we don't even know if that's a whole, factual thing, because there's controversy around that, like the missing video that should exist. And then there's also the conflict of the times. But we know that in 2017, Rick Allen had already identified himself as being there. It was not a needle in a haystack. It would have been like, if you had 500 people out there, even that would be enough to limit who's there. If you had 200, that's enough to limit who's there. If you got 20, that's enough to limit who's there.
Exactly.
So with this small number of people, they knew Rick was there in 2017. And obviously, this makes it look like 2019. And I want to thank you for finding this.
And I've just actually, sorry to interrupt you, Prof. I just thought of something as well, because, one of the things they said, it was accidentally misfiled and cleared, but she was scanning those paper documents in 2020. So it wasn't cleared on Orion. On Orion, it says it's covered. It doesn't say cleared, and it's clearly accessible. So yeah, there's no reason that misfiled piece of paper wasn't relevant if it was in Orion.
And you see, you're showing here November 2019, which is immediately after October 28th. Isn't this October 28th, the first one?
Yep.
Yeah. So immediately after, there's a November 2019 cast report.
And they are so cagey about that information in I think it's the August 1, 2024 hearing, the motion in limine. So McClelland says that geofencing is not accurate, which I point out is very interesting, because he thinks that toolmark analysis is, particularly toolmark analysis, is comparing an unspent round to a spent round, and yet geofencing is not considered accurate, according to McClelland. But he also says that the defence just aren't finding things. But the defence is saying, we don't know who Agent Sabrick is. We've looked for Agent Sabrick's information and we cannot find it. So I don't think the defence, I don't know, maybe now they have been, but I don't think they were provided with the stage 2 geofencing data, which could have tracked Rick's phone. And I also don't think that they were provided with the full cast analysis. And I've always maintained that, because if Rick's phone shows he's there on the day, then they would have used that against him. And if Rick's phone shows it wasn't anywhere near the trails all day, then the state would have used that against him too, as consciousness of guilt and premeditation. He didn't want to take his phone when he was going to go commit this crime. So my belief is that information is there, buried somewhere, hopefully in discovery, but otherwise definitely available, that will show that Rick Allen left the trails prior to the crime.
Or maybe it's just been disappeared because it shows that he's so if it's disappeared because it counters the state's narrative, is what I would suspect, because with the amount of manipulation, my theory, another conspiracy theory that I often repeat, is that I believe the discovery has been sanitized. But obviously there are mistakes, and look at, I want to point this out before we turn the page. Lead cleared. Okay. When did this happen? Who did this? Where's the story behind that?
And there's two different types of handwriting on that page too. So there's multiple people who have looked at it. Look at the handwriting. You've got the curly handwriting that's kind of got more of a feminine feel about it, if you ask me. But I'm not a handwriting analyst. And then you've got the second lot, which is it's clearly a different person who's written lead cleared.
Clearly a different writing, yeah. Um, so I think what we'll do, I'll go through this again. I know you don't have long here, but because it's a lot to it. But again, this is Daisy's, or this is Daisy Asks, which is Amy's channel.
And
Yeah.
really read that quote that I put in the presentation. That's a quote from Kathy Shank's testimony where she says she must have filed those 2 sheets in 2017. Well, you can't file something that was printed in 2019 in 2017. That is a direct lie. Essentially, I hate to say it, but it is. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know. Maybe Kathy Shank has been duped by law enforcement into believing this as well. Who knows? I don't know her personally, but it's inaccurate.
I don't know. I mean, it's like it's. I remember that Fig Solves claimed to Skip Jansen that Judge Gull's assistant, and that would be Jody, knows that he's guilty, wants him to serve a harsh punishment at Westville because that's where he belongs, because she's seen everything. And it's, I think a lot of people have been led to believe they want to trust law enforcement. They want to trust. And unfortunately, we're not in that world anymore. Sorry. Um, that's very distinct handwriting, says Christina. They know who that is. Yeah, I'd agree.
Mm.
It, I
Yeah.
would think in that small office they would know whose handwriting that is. Let's be
Of
real.
course. Of course.
But
Yeah.
we'll never get a
Yeah.
straight answer.
No. And I think that maybe, yeah, that is how some people have been pulled into this, being told, oh, it's okay if we just tell a little lie here because he's guilty anyway. He killed those 2 girls, so
Mhm.
he deserves it. Let's just twist things a little bit. But when you look at the evidence, there's not one piece of evidence that is convincing. There is not
No,
one piece of evidence.
no. And I actually believe that the indicators that he is not are predominating the any sort of shred of evidence that would say that he is, which is only at this point everything that says that they would lead you to believe says he is it has to do with him. It's his drug induced uh, trauma in coerced confessions. It's his words in cooperating with Doolin in 2017 that they changed the time to try to place him there in the golden hour, which is when all this tragedy happened, according to their theory. And so they, it's like as time has passed, everything's fallen away because they said the blue jacket must mean it's him. No, it's not, because it's not
Yep.
valid. Then they say, well, it must be the gun, and you can't even get the ballistics expert to say it is, or that they can exclude any others. And now we know that nearly everyone else implicated in this crime also owned a 40 caliber handgun.
Yep.
So yeah, just as this is all, it's almost as if this stuff falls away, he becomes more and more exonerated, and the exculpatory evidence builds. And that's what it seems like we're seeing now, is this buildup of the exculpatory indicators. And I don't see it going back. I mean, especially if these attorneys, these appellate attorneys, have any luck right now in really delving into. I'm waiting on them to get these exhibits they're missing from the Franks memo and the motion to correct error, because it's so important
Mm.
that they have that stuff to have a good working over to present in their brief. And
I suppose,
I
I mean, I don't understand the law at all. I don't understand the law even here, let alone over in the States. And I guess what I always get disheartened about, though, is that some of the lawyers, online will sort of say, oh, well, that's not an appellate issue, or that has to wait till PCR. And I don't know, I don't understand it. But surely, if we've got all of this information that shows that there's tampering with evidence, there's lying on the testament, like lying on the stands, like surely they can do something sooner. But I don't know. I don't know.
well, I think the most basic explanation that I know is that the appellate attorneys are limited to what was included in the entire process from day of arraignment all the way until post sentencing. And so everything else will it will necessarily have to be part of a second defense should the
Hmm.
time come. But I know it's complicated, and that's been part of a lot of the bad feelings or controversy in the community as well. Is that this misunderstanding of the limits of it all and what a
Yeah.
post-conviction investigation is for, what it's used for versus what is the appeals. And I've been highly critical of this concept of the Davis-Hatton procedure because I think that's been used to, people have big feelings around this case, especially after witnessing the mistreatment of Rick Allen. Everyone has a big heart for Rick Allen or because of that
Yeah.
obvious maltreatment. But the concept of getting him out immediately with any sort of evidence of this nature, it's very minimal because the
Mm.
threshold is so high and the
Yep.
odds are so low. So I know it's a difficult thing, but at the end of the day, I think that this long game or the long road is the one worth pursuing, which is what we're all doing now. And I think you've just made a huge contribution in digging
I
this
hope
piece
so.
out because this looks, I'm sure there's always an explanation that will come after the fact to try
Yeah.
to explain it away. But I mean, at first sight, there's just no situation I can think of that would explain this away. It seems to be
No.
a red flag, a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I thought about all of these possibilities. Like was she bulk printing a whole lot of leads at the same time? But no, it's one of one. She's complete,
Hmm.
like she's browsed that particular one. Then you think, well, yeah, was she just trying to consolidate the paper files? But that doesn't really make sense. There's no reason to consolidate paper files, particularly for a cleared lead. So yeah, it's hard to explain. I'm sure they will find some sort of explanation. And the thing is, they get away with it. That's the problem. They
Every
got away
time.
with with
Yeah.
all of the explanations they had through the trial. Um, they were allowed to. They were allowed to do these things that, like I've said before, if somebody administratively in my own little practice made those mistakes, they'd probably lose their job. But in the
Hmm.
Indiana State Police, you can make all these mistakes, and it's like, oh well, whoops.
This entire thing has just been an absolute travesty. Like, who
Mm.
would have ever seen anything of the sort? But I think they own all the judges, obviously, a large number of the cops, and it's just everyone covers each other's hind end. And
Yeah. I
I don't
think the
know.
one thing I'm hopeful for is that judgment from Gall around suppressing the geofencing data. I really am still pinning hope on that as whether that can be raised at appeal because that's on record.
Hmm.
And hopefully somebody can actually then look at that geofencing data in detail, even if it has been removed from discovery or sanitized. Google will have records of what was requested. And so
Hmm.
if it turns out that what was requested isn't what's in discovery, well, then again, isn't that's a major issue, right? Because that's a
Hmm.
Brady violation. I think. Again, I
Yeah.
don't like to misquote the law because I don't know enough about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Hiding exculpatory evidence. Not good.
exactly. Well, I'll leave you guys there. I have a patient to see now, but thank you so much, Prof, for having me on, and thank you for all your support, and thank you everybody in the chat for all your support too. I'll read the comments later. I didn't get to read because I was a bit nervous, so I was focusing on our conversation. But yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we'll send everyone to your channel.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Amy. Okay, everybody. So please do thank Amy G as she leaves. She's a busy lady today, so she's got to go to work. And what we're going to do is get on into looking a little more closely at her website here. Again, let me see if I can be a champ. And ooh, there you go. I'm going to copy and paste. There we go. So she's at Richard Allen Justice Project dot mycanva or dot my dot canva site. Okay, I'm sorry guys, it's complicated. Listen, Richard Allen Justice Project dot my dot canva dot site. Got it? But if you just go to her YouTube channel, um, you can easily pull it up. Okay, she's got it linked there at her YouTube channel. So please check out her YouTube channel, subscribe to it. She does go through this on her YouTube channel, which is her own presentations. Please do check out her YouTube channel for that stuff. And also, this is an incredible website, and this is what we're going to do now. What I'm going to do now is get on into showing you how this works. So let's pull it back up. All right. Again, this is richardallenjusticeproject.my.canva.site. But we'll go through it now. I want you to see how the website's designed. And remember, this is brand new, so it's sort of a work in progress. It'll be expanded. But here, she's got her various pages, okay? Who is Richard Allen? The Flawed Case, YouTube channel, presentations, about us, links, contact, and join the discussion. This project is independent and not affiliated with any legal team. All views are based on publicly available information and evidence-based analysis. Okay. Who is Richard Allen? Who is Richard Allen? Richard Rick Matthew Allen, often called Ricky by his family, grew up in Indiana and was living quietly in the town of Delphi in 2017. He was a devoted son and husband and proud father to an adult daughter. Steady and reliable, he worked as a trusted employee at CVS, where he became a familiar face behind the pharmacy counter. Rick lived an ordinary, unassuming life. He had no history of criminal behavior, violence, or problematic conduct of any kind. His struggles were inward: low self-esteem, chronic anxiety, and a long history of depression that left him emotionally fragile. These challenges underscored his vulnerability rather than suggesting danger. Before his 2022 arrest and subsequent 2024 conviction in the Delphi case, a conviction now widely questioned, Rick was simply known as a quiet man devoted to his family, his work, and a life of stability built on long-term relationships and consistency. And I would add that he loved his wife and she loved him. Okay. Now, let's go back and go to the flawed case. The flawed case. The conviction of Richard Rick Allen in the Delphi murders is not the story of justice served. It's the story of a vulnerable man caught in the machinery of a flawed system. Rick, a gentle husband, father, and trusted employee, now sits in prison facing 130 years, despite a complete absence of physical evidence or digital tying him to the crime. So I'm just going to edit Amy's work here as I go. Okay, a man, not a monster. Rick Allen had no history of violence, no criminal record, and no pattern of troubling behavior. What he did was carry something far more ordinary: struggles with low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression. These difficulties left him fragile, not dangerous, vulnerable to pressure, suggestion, and the overwhelming weight of a justice system determined to close a case. Remember what I said. This entire thing was to make Delphi go away. You guys do realize that, right? The entire conviction of Richard Allen was intended to, quote unquote, make this case go away. Don't get it twisted. That's why you all are such a problem, and me, because we are not letting this case go away. Remember, the families even asked that Richard Allen not appeal, not exercise his right to appeal, because they want this to go away with Rick Allen too. A case without proof. The prosecution's case leaned on three shaky pillars. And you may recall this from Nick McClelland's opening statements. Alleged confessions given while Rick was isolated and distressed, okay, and also bullied, harassed, and threatened. A disputed bullet analysis, which is not only is it a Is it questionable ballistic evidence? It's not ballistic evidence because ballistics do not work the way that this was presented. Okay, that's not how ballistics work. If you don't understand that, learn to become a shooter and you'll start to understand how guns work and that they don't work like that. Okay, and inconsistent witness accounts, and the way Prof phrases that is everybody lied. Remember that I've consistently said everybody lied. And when I say everybody, when I've said everybody, I've meant everybody. Every witness, and fill in the blank. You know who else? So yeah, alleged confessions, right? Under distress, a disputed bullet analysis, which was no analysis at all, and inconsistent witness accounts, which means they're lying. No DNA, no fingerprints, no clothing fibers, nothing connected Rick to Abby and Libby. In a crime this brutal, the absence of such evidence should matter. Instead, it was overlooked. Cruel and inhumane treatment. Before trial, Rick was held for months in solitary confinement under conditions so extreme they violated the international human rights standards, including the United Nations prohibition on prolonged solitary confinement as a form of, yes, you heard it, torture. He was confined in a facility designed for convicted criminals despite being legally innocent and awaiting trial. Whenever should a pretrial detainee be held for over a year in solitary confinement in a max security prison? You tell me. What if it was you? What if it was your sons or your daughters? Rick was cut off from human contact. His mental health deteriorated rapidly, making him more vulnerable to coercion, confusion, and despair, which is exactly what happened. Such treatment is not justice, it is cruelty that compromises both human dignity and the fairness of legal proceedings. Thank you so much. Beautiful. The danger of false confessions. Nearly 30% of wrongful convictions, later overturned by DNA evidence, involved false confessions. Say that again, Prof. Nearly a third of wrongful convictions that have been overturned by DNA evidence have involved false confessions, according to the Innocence Project. Rick's alleged admissions came while he was isolated, deteriorating in solitary confinement, and highly vulnerable to suggestion. Precisely the conditions known to produce unreliable statements and false confessions. Instead of treating these signs or these as signs of coercion and fragility, the prosecution used them as proof of guilt, just like they used the doctor, his psychologist, Manakawala. This is a railroading, the likes of which you have not seen before. A trial marked by failures. The investigation and trial were clouded by tunnel vision, leaks, and courtroom decisions that tilted the balance against Rick. Yeah, you've heard the phrase of finger on the scales. We're talking about elbow on the scales. Okay? Judge Goals shriveled up, eczema ridden, dehydrated, zombie like elbow straight down on the scales of justice. Alternative suspects were brushed aside. Evidence was selectively interpreted, and jurors were presented with a story that did not match the facts and still doesn't match the facts. Instead of certainty, speculation filled the gaps. Remember, they could never tie Rick to this killing. So what did they have to do? They said, oh, you see that guy, that figment of your imagination, that monster called Bridge Guy, that character in our fairy tale narrative? Well, even though we have no proof, he killed the girls, which is speculative. And then they say, and Rick Allen must be that bridge guy because the 5 witnesses can't decide if they saw him or not. Why it matters. Wrongful convictions do more than destroy one life. They fail the victims' families by leaving the actual truth hidden. They fail the community by undermining trust in the justice system. And they fail the future by allowing the real perpetrators to remain free. The tragedy of the Delphi murders cannot be healed by convicting the wrong man. Our commitment, the Richard Allen Justice Project, exists to bring transparency to this flawed case, to honor both the victims and the truth, and to ensure that vulnerability is not mistaken for guilt. Justice demands clarity, fairness, and honesty, and Rick Allen deserves nothing less. Okay? And as you see, there's a link to her YouTube channel, which I suggest you all go and subscribe because she's got a nice channel where she goes through this. But let us focus tonight. Well, we're going to focus tonight on presentations, but let's just quickly go through the about us, the links to contact, join the discussion. Okay, quickly for the about us. The Richard Allen Justice Project was created out of deep concern for the fairness and truth and the human cost of wrongful conviction. Rick Allen, a husband, father, son, and longtime community member, was sentenced to 130 years in prison for the Delphi murders, despite a case riddled with flaws, incompetence, and a complete absence of physical evidence tying him to the crime. We believe that justice must mean more simply than closing a case. It must mean finding the truth, protecting the vulnerable, and ensuring that no one is condemned without clear, reliable proof. Wrongful convictions are not only devastate the lives of the accused and their families, but also fail victims, their loved ones, and the wider community by leaving the real perpetrator unidentified. This project exists to expose flaws in the case, breaking down the evidence, court decisions, and investigative practices that led to Rick's conviction. Promote transparency, sharing accessible information so the public can understand what happened and why it matters. Advocate for justice, calling for fairness, accountability, and true re-examination of the evidence. Restore humanity, reminding the world that Rick Allen is more than a headline. He's a man whose vulnerability was exploited in a system meant to protect. We're committed to shining a light on this case, not out of sensationalism, but out of compassion, responsibility, and the belief that justice must serve truth, not convenience. Who I am. My name is Amy G., also known as Daisy, and I began this project as both a clinical psychologist and an advocate who has long worked at the intersection of vulnerability, justice, and human dignity. I was moved to act because I saw in Rick not a monster, but a fragile man failed by the very system meant to protect him. My professional background gives me insight into the psychological pressures that make people vulnerable to coercion. And my personal values compel me to stand up when compassion and truth are at risk of being silenced. The Richard Allen Justice Project is my way of bringing that expertise and heart together for Rick, for Abby and Libby, and for the wider community that deserves a justice system we can trust. Again, Amy's specialty is psychological insight into the pressures that make people vulnerable to coercion, which is exactly what's happened here. Okay, so let's look at presentations again. As you see, she has several presentations here. She's got geofencing, tower dumps, and Richard Allen's phone. She's got the lost tip narrative, which we're going to look at. Destroyed evidence, the myth of the matching gun to mark analysis, the timeline, and coming soon, her psychological profile of Richard Allen. Okay? So let's go back into what we were initially looking at here, which was the lost tip narrative. Okay, I don't know if you can all see that. Just a moment. All right. All right. Let's see. We're going to look at this. Why did Kathy Shank print out Richard Allen's tip narrative summary in 2019? Remember, 2019. Debunking the miraculous 2022 discovery story. Kathy Shank printed part of this 2022 discovery in 2019. This is in direct contrast to her testimony in the state's official narrative of how Richard Allen suddenly came to their attention in Kathy Shank's drawers. His info was not lost. It seems likely it was being accessed and reviewed in 2019. Let's say that again for the losers in the back. Richard Allen's information was not lost. It seems very likely, extremely likely, based upon these two circled portions here on the right side of your screen, that this information was actively being accessed and reviewed in 2019. As you can see that Amy has highlighted with the ovals here. At the top, Kathy Shank. At the bottom, 10 29 2018. I'm sorry, 2019. 10 29 2019. Okay. What else was happening in late 2019? Because we know that in April, there were so many important events that many of you have forgotten about in April of 2019. So we need you to rewind your brains back to April of 2019 and think of Garrett Kurtz. Okay. Think of Betsy Blair, Sarah Carbaugh being re interviewed, and think of the change of direction press conference which took the world by storm as suddenly a, a sketch of an old guy with a hat on and facial hair was suddenly replaced by a sketch of an entirely different guy, a young guy with no facial hair, with no hat, but with poofy hair and seemingly 20 years younger. Okay. All of that was going on in April of 2019. Now we know that immediately prior to November, they're accessing Rick Allen's tip or his narrative in the system, which is what we just looked at, and that it was indeed Kathy Shank. And here we see that there are geofencing warrants, the new direction, quote unquote, in this investigation, and the cash report from November 2019. They were trying to identify phones pinging around the crime scene. Why did law enforcement need Rick's narrative summary in 2019? Logical conclusion, according to Amy, would be to compare geofencing results to either rule him out as a person of interest, or more likely, to rule out his pings as already belonging to a cleared person. It's very likely Rick was truly already ruled out in 2017, possibly based on phone records or other information that has been disappeared, like I said. And look at the nonchalant attitude in the marking. Nothing new. Nothing new. Phone info provided to ISP, extracted from Exhibit 228. You can also see here Rick Allen Whiteman versus Richard M. Allen. Says here, fully covered in Orion. Okay. Fully covered in Orion, document scanned. Lead cleared, nothing new. Phone info provided. The date on this, interesting to know what it was. Okay, Kathy Shank's testimony, 2017 reception, To greet walk-in tipsters, fill out info sheets, name and contact, past a defective, not reading or investigating, although we know that that's not what happened. Filing, banker's boxes, filing cabinets, create folders with names, label only, not, she was told, she alleges to have been told not to read content. Green mark meant cleared, not her decision. 2017 to 2018 data entry. Orion covered leads, typed officer written narrative summaries into the database. Transcription role, not analysis. 2018 and beyond, tip entry. Orion tips. Enter email tips into database. Tips, leads, narratives. No printing described. 2020 to 2022, scanning, filing cabinets into Orion. Scan hard copy files into the database. Claims it took 2 years. Then the magical rediscovery in the miscellaneous box in her drawers. Finds Richard Allen Whiteman lead sheet. Claims she first noticed Allen's tip in 2022. But the 2019 printout that Amy discovered proves she accessed it earlier. October 2019. The Orion printout appears to file, in file narrative summary printed from Orion, date stamped October 29th, 2019. Doesn't fit her organizer data entry role, not explained in her testimony. Required deliberate database access for that specific tip. And again, remember, Amy said printed one of one. This was a one-of-one type of print. This was not 300 pages, which included the tip. This was a single intentional print job. Kathy Shank's testimony. Question, and is there some significance to the fact that the box was from a tip that came in February of 2017 with relationship to the work you were doing? I honestly don't know how that lead ended up in that box. I do not know. Yes, it's miraculous. Well, you were helping with the case in February of 2017? I was. I was. I was helping with it, but I don't know how that exact lead sheet became in that box. I had filed, obviously, a lead in the narrative I found at some point way back in 2017, but I certainly hadn't remembered it by that time. So she says Kathy Shank's role seems to have been to organize paperwork and then scan it all in to consolidate the digital database. The exact opposite of printing things off the database to file in a paper folder. Good job, Amy. Yeah, good job. Exactly. Why is she printing in October 2019, Rick Allen? If her job is to put paper into digital format. And I'll skip over this here. But you can see she's got the narrative versus documented paper trail. There's some contradictions in there. You can go and look at this yourself over at Amy's website here. And remember, this is Richard Allen Justice Project.my.canva.site. Implications. The state put on a witness who told jurors Allen's tip was rediscovered miraculously in 2022, and Kathy Shank had an aha moment. Their own exhibit proved it was accessed in October of 2019. This is false testimony, and they let it stand like plenty of others. Remember, I said everybody lied. Why is there this glaring discrepancy between Kathy Shank's testimony and the print date of 2019? Either she lied, intentionally concealing prior access, or she gave false, misleading testimony, knowingly or unknowingly. And did law enforcement and prosecution know the truth? It's quite likely because the printout date was right there on their own exhibit. Why this is serious. False testimony. Napui v. Illinois, remember? Convictions obtained through false or misleading testimony violate due process. It means immediate appeal, okay, overturning. Even if Kathy Shank misspoke, the state had a duty to correct the record for the jury, and they didn't. State misrepresentation. The whole prosecution story was that Allen's name was, quote unquote, rediscovered in 2022 in Kathy Shank's drawers. I mean, in her box. The 2019 printout proves that this is false. Law enforcement and prosecutors allowed the jury to be misled. That is a constitutional problem. Why this is serious. Trial exhibit equals record evidence. Unlike many new evidence claims, this isn't hidden in a file cabinet. It was admitted in trial and shown to jurors and stamped with 2019. That means appellate lawyers can argue it because it is involved in the record. They don't need to wait for post-conviction relief or investigation. Possible appellate issues. Undisputed documentary fact. States Exhibit 228 is a narrative summary printed from the Orion database and bears a 2019 print date stamp. This is physical documentary evidence in the trial record. Witness testimony directly contradicts it. On the witness stand, Kathy Shank testified that she only rediscovered Allen's lead in September of 2022. Remember, that lead is from 2017. So we were led, and the jury was led, and the world was led to believe that from 2017 to 2022, no one knew a damn thing about Rick Allen. But let's be real here. Richard Allen was known about the whole time, ladies and gentlemen. On the stand, Kathy Shank testified she rediscovered Richard Allen's cleared lead back in September of 2022 and described her role as clerical, organizational, not investigative. And she gave the jury the clear impression that this file had not been accessed or otherwise relied upon between 2017 and 2022. This 2019 printout on Exhibit 228 directly refutes her testimony. Secondary layers, geofencing. 2019 timing overlaps with the cast geofence work, suggesting a motive for why this particular narrative was accessed in 2019. Suppression of geofence evidence looks like the state buried data that didn't fit, which is my conspiracy theory, as you heard me just discuss with Amy. Defense failure to cross-examine means ineffective assistance for PCR if the appeal courts dodge it. Remember, another point here is that Baldwin, Razi, and Auger failed to notice this glaring contradiction in Exhibit 228. Again, let me state that again for those in the back. The defense team failed to notice the obvious 2019 date on Exhibit 228, which adds to the fact that it is very likely that they provided ineffective assistance of counsel for Richard Allen, which is an appellate issue. Possible direct appeal angles. Suppression ruling already in record. The geofence fight happened in trial court. That means appellate counsel can argue the judge wrongly suppressed all the geofence data. Even if trial counsel argued it poorly, the appellate courts review the ruling itself, the record itself, not just the framing. The right to present a complete defense. U.S. Supreme Court has long held, for example, Crane v. Kentucky, Holmes v. South Carolina, that excluding defense evidence can violate due process. Again, let's say that again. The U.S. Supreme Court has long held that excluding defense evidence can violate due process. If Allen's own phone and geofence data was exculpatory, which I believe it was, excluding it isn't just evidentiary error, it's constitutional violation. Furthermore, state misrepresentation, quote unquote, rediscovering Richard Allen in 2022. If the appellate record includes references to Allen being, quote unquote, rediscovered, then the defense can argue that this narrative was misleading in light of the 2019 print that bolsters an appeal argument that the trial was tainted by inaccurate state representations and, I must say, ineffective assistance of counsel. Okay. And this is Amy G's channel, Daisy Asks, over at YouTube. Here on YouTube, it's at youtube.com, Amy G 3060. Amy G 3060. All right, let's go back. So we'll quickly take a scan of some of her other presentations. Let me get some water. You can see here she has one called Delphi Murders, the Flawed Case Against Richard Allen, Geofencing and Tower Dumps, the hidden key to the Delphi case. She's got a link here to her live stream covering it. The law enforcement suppressed the data that could exonerate Richard Allen. Tower dumps, geofencing, cast, Cheyenne Mills, appellate, relevance. Okay. Oh. So I will quickly go through this so you can get an idea of the level of her presentations, which I'm sure you will enjoy. There are two known towers in Delphi. Wells Tower, 3451 North Wells, and 3046 North 575 West. Both Rick's home on Whiteman Drive and the Monon High Bridge are in the range of these local towers. Hard to know if they're covered by the same tower, and even if they are, whether they are covered by the same sector. Okay, but we'll be talking about that on my channel later with these towers, but I'm going to focus on Amy's information here. Okay. So she's showing here the cell towers and the approximate sector coverage by latitude and longitude. She's talking about interpreting the movements, the pings, the behavioral timeline values for investigators. The geofencing warrant discussed in hearings on July 30th to August 1st. Okay, so remember that those 3-day hearings are extremely important for this case, and I've been meaning when we have time to go back into those 3 days of hearings, and we will be. I take things as they come with urgency, but these 3-day hearings are extremely important, and the geofencing was discussed in those 3-day hearings, and you guys need to recall all that was excluded. Remember everything that was excluded, and all the filings for these for this time period are also really pertinent. But we'll move on. Okay. Geofencing data. Okay. She talks about how it's very likely that Richard Allen on his Android would have had his geofencing data recorded because there were default settings on the Androids for all of the Google products. And it's likely that his cell phone was caught up in the geofencing data. Okay. Remember that of the 3 phones that we've discussed prior to trial, we discussed the 3 phones. Richard Allen's phone is not one of those 3 phones, by the way. Neither is Brad Holder's, neither is Patrick Westfall's, neither is any of the other people who've been speculated. Okay, those 3 phones, it ain't Rick Allen and it ain't none of your POIs. Let me go back. Okay, so she's thoroughly going through all of this. And she's talking about what she mentioned earlier about Rick's phone being off versus Rick's phone being there, but maybe earlier. Remember, if Rick did have his phone and he was there earlier, the state would have a reason to disappear that information. Okay. If Rick's phone pinged the towers during that time frame and the activity was analyzed, it could provide vital information to form a behavioral timeline. Mapping pings and activity tells whether he was scrolling at home, driving, walking around, idle, or silent. If normal use overlaps the crime time, that's an important point she's making. If normal use overlaps the time that the crime is alleged to have happened, that's extremely exculpatory. If Rick's home and the crime scene are in different sectors or covered by different towers, this could refine tracking of location of his phone during the crime window. Okay. If Rick is pinging around the crime window, but not showing up in the crime scene, he's not the killer. And she goes into this. Sorry, I got to yell at a kid. Hold on. All right. Suppression of geofencing and cast. Defense tried to argue, look, these other phones were near the bridge. Maybe one of them belongs to the real killer, one of the three phones, right? Gold lumped the entire damn thing into third party suspects. Getting the fuck out of here. Remember that? Remember Gull? Like I said, the iron fist, the elbow on the scales of justice. Your Judge Gull, the savior of the Delphi case for the troll farm and the guilters and the bootlickers and the dumbasses. Appellate angles. If defense had argued that this data could be used as evidence of Rick's movement, it should have been admissible. If defense had argued it. Okay. Why didn't defense argue it? Again, was this ineffective assistance or what's going on here? It's another question for the appellate attorneys. Miss Oleana, word up. Check it out. Okay, she goes into Cheyenne Mill. Did LE have geofencing data in 2017? Yes, they did, of course. If LE had recorded or retained her February phone number properly, the FBI would not have needed to call the registered owner, been unaware it was Cheyenne's, or acted surprised that it was pinged. This shows the number was discovered later, not from her prior witness statement. Did LE have geofencing data? Phone pinged in the area. Tower sectors in Delphi cover large areas. Yes, they do. A tower dump alone wouldn't uniquely identify her device. The only plausible explanation is that her phone was captured in the stage 1 geofence near the high bridge, flagged for notable movement patterns. This matches the exact phrasing the FBI used. Phone pinged in the area. A telltale sign of Google-derived geofencing. This suggests the FBI or CAS team had already launched geofence analysis by 2017 August, not in 2019. Rick's missing phone. Celebrite analysis would have provided even a more granular information about his movements and activities. This would have proved catastrophic for the state's timeline. Is this why they were so quick to get in and execute that search warrant? Why did they want Rick in the station without his vehicle? Obtaining Rick's phone info. Check the discovery for the geofencing from 2017. Check the tower dump data to find pings and analyze behavior of the phone. Check the 2019 geofence data. Track devices in stage one pinging in and around the trails during the 12 to 4 p.m. window. Check against known witness statements. Why hasn't this already been done? Why wasn't this already done? This should have been done. Compare geofencing pings and tower dump pings for Rick's phone. Check whether law enforcement requested earlier geofencing data. Subpoena the FBI data. What about the lost, destroyed recordings from 2017? 70 days of lost interviews? You lost all the eyewitnesses and all the suspects' interviews? Really? During the first 6 months of the investigation, including the entire first week, including the family's information? Why did Discovery Map not list 2017 interviews for either of the witnesses, the eyewitnesses? This is just a defense document, not a list of all discovery, but it seems telling that the 2017 interviews of Betsy Blair and Bree Wilbur are not listed, especially as they are constantly referred back to their 2019 2020 interviews. Remember, 2019 was important. Bree stated that she saw others on the trails on the way back from High Bridge. What if one of those people was Rick? By the time they got an official statement in 2020, her memory would have been degraded. And Betsy, what if she also saw Rick, but again, her memory 2 years later would have been fallible? And what if they didn't? And let's not forget, Kelsey German initially mentioned seeing a black or dark SUV with bunch of stickers or decals at the back, at the Mears lot. This was not mentioned in her official testimony at trial. Why not? Was her interview one of the lost recordings too? What about the other family members? Okay. As you can see, she's got a lot here. So please go check that out. And let's do one more. Let's do the timeline. Is it possible to debunk the guilty timeline while sticking to the facts? Betsy Blair, the four girls, Richard Allen, Abby Libby, putting timelines together, memory research. Who does Betsy Blair see? Betsy Blair's times are well corroborated by Hoosier Harvester footage and Fitbit data, making her arrivals and departures rock solid, but not necessarily her story, I must add. Her description of her loops is less reliable. Why are her statements unreliable, and where is her 2017 interview? Betsy Blair's description of Bridge Guy was an unknown male, 20 or 30s, brown poofy hair, average height, not short, no facial hair. Oh, kind of just like the sketch, right? We have a tentative timeline for Betsy Blair. What is Betsy Blair doing so frantic on February 13, 2017? Why is she so frantically moving about the Monon High Bridge and the area? Who did the four girls see? You have varying statements. Remember, I said everybody lied, everybody saw somebody else. Bree Wilbur, where's the 2017 interview? Where's Anna Spath's witnessing statement? Where's Isabella Voorhees' witness statement? Why are we having multiple descriptions of different people, primarily focusing around, when it comes to these girls, a very large guy looking like he could rip your arms off, dressed in all black? Who on earth would ever describe Richard Allen as a very tall guy, a big guy, looking like muscular, like he could rip your arms off? Would you look at Richard Allen and think, oh, there's a huge muscular guy who looks like he could rip your arms off? And was Richard Allen in all black? Or some combination? As you see, Rayleigh Voorhees saw a man walking a dog. We know who that is now. Bree Wilbur saw a few people, one or two people. Anna Spath, kind of creepy guy in blue jeans, light blue duck canvas jacket, gray brown hair. Bree Wilbur, black hoodie, black jeans, black boots, black windbreaker, black, all black, taller than her, muscular, younger in his 30s. Rayleigh Voorhees, all black, again, all black. No bigger than 5'10", bigger, grumpy, 20s, 30s, square jaw. Who was this big guy in all black? Is that any way you would ever describe Richard Allen? The four girls allegedly don't cross paths with Betsy Blair. How is that possible? Okay. There are more timeline things. I'm just showing you her presentation here so you can go and take it in yourself or go watch it on her YouTube channel. Like I said, you can see Betsy Blair here. Why is she moving around so much? Why is she so frantic? Why is she moving around so frantically around the trails that day? Betsy Blair don't see the girls don't see Betsy. She don't see Rick Allen don't see her. But she's frantically moving around the area that day. For the later timeline to work, The only missed sightings of people walking directly past each other is the four girls missing Rick. Okay, then she goes into memory stuff. Um, all right, back to the issues of Richard Allen said he saw three girls, not four. She says we can completely miss people. A different person isn't always noticed. Maybe he saw three other girls, though. Remember, everybody lied. Everybody out there that day lied. Okay. The four girls didn't see Rick, they only saw some guy, and their descriptions vary among who they saw. Okay. Threatening, big guy, overdressed. He's big, he's muscular, he's in all black. Looked more so their age, 20s to 30s. 20s to 30s means 20s, right? You're going to remember, you're going to be easily able to say a guy in his 20s to 30s versus a guy in his 40s to 50s, because you're not going to think at 18 years old or 16 years old. You're going to look at an old guy and think he's old. You're going to look at a young guy and think he's almost your age, kind of hot. Or you're going to look at someone in the middle and say you really don't know, because 35 becomes 45 becomes 55 easily in a teenager's mind. So what happened here? Seems like they saw a young guy in his 20s who was muscular AF and dressed in all black, right? Okay. But she's got more info here, and I'm scrolling through, including the description, generic description of Bridge Guy versus the generic features of Rick Allen. Again, you're talking about 5'4" 5'4", 5'4". Is 5'4" anything like 5'10" to 6 foot? He's got a short, pudgy body, not a muscular body. He was not in all black. The defense was greatly handicapped by starting their investigation 6 years after the crime, when witness statements would become diluted, contaminated, some destroyed, some coerced to be what the law enforcement wanted. Also, they were handicapped by not watching the prof. But realize there was no crime scene reconstructionist, right? How much study was done on the cell phone possibilities out there on the bridge? Again, like I said, there were so many things that the defense could have done that were not done, especially in my mind, crime scene reconstruction, real world cell phone testing. Get an iPhone 6S, go out to the bridge, use real human beings in the place of these scenarios, get to work. Why was it not done? Why was it so easily agreed upon that the jury would not visit the crime scene? Because let me tell you this, the jury visiting that crime scene could have had a great effect on the case. Let's be real here. Any of you that have been out to that crime scene, I guarantee you, let me put it this way, if you haven't been, I guarantee you that visiting that scene will totally change your mind and clarify things on the Delphi murders. You would see what would be possible and what would be impossible. You would see what would be likely and what would be unlikely. I truly do believe the defense should have brought the jury out to that scene, let them take it all in, and then explained it to them. What is the likelihood that anyone would have done this? Not just Richard Allen, not just Bridge Guy, not just some crazed maniac all meth out of his mind who looks like he could rip your arms off. What are the odds that anyone would have done this in broad daylight and out in the wide open in the middle of the day? They could have asked those questions. They could have asked, could you see someone going through that creek when it's chest deep? They would have asked. They could have demonstrated to the jury that if you're at this crime scene, looking up at Brad Weber's, noticing that Brad Weber would be in an elevated position, or anyone at that property, they could have clearly demonstrated to the jury. You see up there, that's Brad Weber's. You don't think someone up there would have seen directly down onto Ron Logan's right here? In the broad daylight from an elevated position, looking right down onto the clearing that is the crime scene? There's so many things that the defense could have enlightened the jurors upon by having them visit the crime scene and explaining these things, these pointing out these obvious uh, illogical fallacies, or these logical fallacies, these illogical scenarios that the prosecution presented. Why didn't they? And I think that's about it for me, because I think I just reached the limit of how far I can go without starting to get angry tonight. But all of these questions haunt me. They haunt my mind. I sit here and I think, what in the world is going on here? What in the world is going on here? I mean, this is not about pointing fingers. It's about thinking critically and asking questions. But really, what has gone on here? And remember, I presented to you recently this one right here. Let's see. Where is it? Come on, prof. There it is. First joint stipulation. Remember, we talked about this. So you're meaning to tell me, starting with number 6, agreeing to not questioning any of the evidence from the crime scene, any of the evidence resulting from the search warrant at Richard Allen's house, none of the AT&T records, none of the victims' phones, none of the extractions, including Derek German's extraction, none of the Harvest Store video. So yeah, I think I'm burned out because it's just inconceivable to me. Inconceivable. Anyhow, let's see what I want to show you. Let's see. Oh, come on, prof. All right. Again, you guys go visit Daisy Ask YouTube channel. Okay. Go subscribe there. She does good little presentations, and I don't. So go subscribe over there. Okay, you can see these are some videos, like I said, of her presentations. Okay. And like I said, please go to let me pull this up for you. Please go now and subscribe here. This is twitch.tv/the prof allegedly. Prof allegedly at Twitch, okay? Please go subscribe there. This is what it looks like. I'm going to intend to do Thursday shows. Twitch Thursdays, okay? So as you can see here, Twitch TV Prof allegedly. I'll do Thursday shows here, and I'll also upload videos to the video section. So please go ahead. Please go ahead and subscribe here. I really would appreciate seeing you tomorrow so that we can chat over there. If you don't go over there and subscribe, I'll be chatting with myself, which is fine too. But I'll be over there on Thursdays from here on out. Okay. That's the goal with the Twitch. So thanks for going over there. Thanks for going to Amy G's. Really appreciate you all for being here. And I want to shout out to our two donors today, which was Rebecca Ann and Granny D. Okay, special thanks, shout out to Rebecca Ann and Granny D for supporting the channel. And welcome to the membership, Quad Axel Mimi. Appreciate the membership. Hope you enjoy being a part of the channel. Yeah, so that's it for our little Wednesday night show. It's a little short one. Wanted to keep it around an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it looks like we made it. So appreciate everybody for coming. I'll see you tomorrow at Twitch. I'll see you Friday back here. So God bless everyone. Hey, I got a special thing that I want to do. Let's see. It goes like this. You'll love it. Trust me. Let me grab it. We're going to start with this.
Well, obviously, we have a rapist in Lincoln Park. The man got away, leaving behind evidence. What? Oh my God! Ah! Oh my God! Obviously, we have a rapist in Lincoln Park.
Prof is a fucking terrorist, a fucking pedophile, sympathizing fucking terrorist.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Ah! Oh my God! Bruh.
It was our job to help law enforcement. It was our job to help law enforcement.
Bruh.